Welcome to our Mentoring Matters talk for this month of June. Our program for today is as follows. First, I will give you a brief introduction about the Mentoring Club for those of you who are joining us for the first time. And then we will dig right onto the topic of discussion, moderated by Kimberly and participated in by Mahni, Evelyne, Nidhi, and Mark. And of course, all of you, our audience, are welcome to join in the conversation. Our topic is, what kind of leadership do we need in the world today? And then we will wrap up with some announcements about the Mentoring Club community events. So first, I would like to, you can see how the community is alive with Kimberly joining us and the rest of the gang being open, but I would like to express my gratitude to all of our volunteers and supporters right up front. Without their help, any of our programs and events wouldn't be possible. And for all of you who are attending, I would also like to encourage you to follow all the pages that we have in social media. This is our exposure so far. Follow the pages, like, comment, and share. That will help us spread the word. And then tag us whenever you're posting about topics like leadership development, and mentoring. Now, what is the Mentoring Club? For those of you who are first-timers again, and a refresher update for the community members. So at the heart of the vision and the mission of the Mentoring Club are the mentees. They are passionate and driven. They want to make a difference in the world, and the community of mentors are there to help them develop specific competencies and skills to guide them in achieving their career and life goals. And we are able to do this through a platform-based approach to mentoring, where mentoring can happen anywhere in the world. So as an update to our community, how is it working right now? So based on our platform data, these are some examples of relationships that are going on within the Mentoring Club community. So Michaela is a mentee with a mentoring relationship with a mentor in California, in Illinois, in the Czech Republic, in Mexico. Another mentee from Kenya has a relationship with a mentor in Uganda and mentors in California. Another mentee in India has a relationship with a mentor in New York and also in the Bay Area, California. Another mentee in China, Joy, has a relationship with Mark, a mentor in Australia, and a couple of mentors in California. And then last example is Naj, with a mentor in Canada and California. So as you can see, the grouping in California is showing obviously a lot of density, and this is how we look like as far as mentors and mentees spread throughout the world as of the end of 2021. How do we attract people to join our community? This is what the slide is talking about. We do so by attracting them with our foundational values. If we share the same values or similar values, we may think differently. That's okay. We can disagree. But fundamental values, if we can agree on certain values, then we know that we're going in the right direction. So the first three is anchored on trust. Integrity, honesty, and commitment, we believe, are what make us trustworthy and as individuals and professionals. Vision and execution are anchored on leadership. We need both to become successful leaders. And the last group of values, humanity, contentment, family, are what make us, at the end of the day, feeling fulfilled, happy, and successful because of our relationships with other people. And And this is the ultimate dream, is that as mentees become successful leaders themselves, that they will become mentors to others. Now, for our topic today, what kind of leadership do we need in the world today? I'm happy to have, this distinguished leaders, accomplished leaders in their own rights, to be joining us. But let me give you a brief background about this topic. So in the animal kingdom, there are two leadership models that we look at: elephants and lions. You may have read the description. And so what are elephant leaders? Elephant herds are led by an alpha female, a matriarch, and she is not chosen by her ability to be the most aggressive or assertive. She is chosen by the group collectively because of her ability to demonstrate leadership through her wisdom, strength, extraordinary skills in problem solving, social intelligence, openness, ability to communicate, decisiveness, patience, confidence, and compassion. And this quote is taken from Jessica Cortius, her article as the founder of Soyuz. And so how are we looking at lions? Lions have always been considered as the symbol of power, bravery, courage, strength, fearlessness, and ferocity. These attributes contribute as a building block of his success as a leader. And this is a quote by Binish Razak on an article on Medium. So that's kind of the framework that we're looking at. So in this conversation, we invite you to listen and learn from our mentors, whether they're similar or different views about leadership, and their take on what kind of leadership we need in the world today. Now, all of those thoughts will be based on individual experiences and perspectives, as far as what are the challenges that leaders are facing today and may be facing in the future. So I will now turn you over to Kimberly Wiefling, a very good friend of myself and the Mentoring Club, a very huge supporter of our mission. All yours, Kimberly.
Thank you, Liesl. I don't know if I should start by roaring like a lion or making a elephant sound. I'm not sure. Feel free during this event to make either sound while you're on mute, mind you, okay? So I'm Kimberly Wiefling. I spent the first 7 years of my career studying physics. So I have a master's in physics. And then I joined Hewlett-Packard for 10 years and 7 different engineering jobs. And I said, why didn't I study psychology? And after that, I joined 3 failed startup companies in Silicon Valley. It was exciting. And then I started my own consulting business in the dot-com bust of 2001. Never looked back, working mostly with Japanese businesses who are globalizing, focusing on how to turn managers into leaders and groups into true teams that can get impossible things done. It's not difficult. And I am here tonight to facilitate a wonderful panel of these 4 incredible leaders. And I'm so curious to hear what they say, because I know, based on facts as a scientist, that the biggest causes of failure in teams, the largest, most frequent causes of failure in teams, are completely and utterly a failure of leadership. They fail to build trusting relationships. They don't communicate, make decisions, or solve problems effectively. They don't have clear shared goals that are aligned with individuals and the team. It's completely a failure of leadership. This is the perfect conversation to be having. And don't we need leadership at this time in this critical area of our lives with the world and the situation it is today? So thank you for having me here. And I am going to welcome our first, oh, by the way, before I jump into our first wonderful speaker, we want to make this interactive. Type in the chat. If you hear something that sticks in your head, put it in the chat. We'll save the chat. Make a reaction. Let's all try reactions right now. If you love what's being said, go ahead. Reactions, hit the heart button, or woo, you're celebrating it. And if you want to ask a question at some point, please raise your hand and you'll pop up to the top of my screen. And I want to make this about you and interacting. And we'd love to see your faces. If you don't mind having your videos on, please feel free to put them on. But again, in the chat, Our speakers will be monitoring the chat and interacting with you there when they're not busy talking to you in person. All right, so we have Evelyne Keomian, and she is going to give you a brief introduction of herself, and then the other three will do the same, and then we'll get more into it. So get your questions ready if you want to participate. Evelyne, welcome.
Thank you, Kimberly. That was such a warm introduction. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Hi, my name is Evelyne Keomian, and I am originally from the Ivory Coast. And yes, it is a country. It is located on the west part of Africa, and I am currently located in Palo Alto, California. So the way I tell people is think about it as the California of Africa, right? I'm from that part of the world. All right. So in terms of what I do, what I spend my day doing as of right now, I am a social entrepreneur. I am the founder and the executive director of the Karat School Project. You will hear me refer to it as the KSP, which is way shorter than Karat School Project, though we love the name because we believe that every child is a diamond and they just need to be given opportunity to shine. And at the Karat School Project, at the heart of our mission, we have education. And so with everything we do, we have the backbone of education because we believe that education is the most sustainable tool to help break the cycle of poverty. It did for me. And in the last 4 years that we have been operating, both in the Ivory Coast and right here in the peninsula with unhoused and homeless children, we have impacted more than 500 children. We have advocated with school districts so that children who don't have addresses can have access to equity education, and it is changing lives. So that's what I spend my day doing. I'm also a children's book author. It's coming up in a few months. And what else? Yeah. So in terms of leadership, I am very excited because with my background and now being in the heart of the Silicon Valley, there's a big soup on my style of leadership. But I will give it to Kimberly and she will take it away.
Evelyne, oh my gosh, the Palo Alto of Africa. I cannot wait to go to the Ivory Coast now. And thank you for the wonderful work you're doing, shining these diamonds, the diamonds in the rough. All right, well, we're going to go next to Mahni Shayganfar. Please take it away, Mahni.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Evelyne. Yeah, my name is Mahni Shayganfar, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a stealth startup company here in Silicon Valley. I have an interdisciplinary background, both in industry and education. I started as a computer hardware engineer, and then I segued into AI and machine learning. Then in my PhD, I worked on what we call cognitive robotics topics, which made me much more interested in leadership skills. I have my own reasons for it. When it's time, I can discuss all the details, specifically because I was working on basically collaborative robots, how humans and robots, they can collaborate with each other. So there are a lot of knowledge that you need in human psychology to understand the underlying concepts. So enough about me. Like I would say about my take on leadership. I would say the way I look into it, I see each of us as human beings as a complex system. And the way I look at the leaders, I look at the leaders as one of us, which is what I call it multifaceted, complex system, which needs to deal with this complexity internally and externally. Which is dynamically changing, rapidly changing environment. And this is very tough to deal with. What I'm proposing, in short, is a framework, which is basically based on innovation, intellectualism, humility, and effective communication. I believe we can enable any leader with this framework to basically operate in their own environment as an effective leader. I have so many other topics related to this to discuss in our discussion. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mahni. And it brings to mind my background in physics, chaos and complexity theory. Complex is not necessarily complicated. It's different, and allowing things to emerge rather than command and control. It's so appropriate for a messy, chaotic system like our world today. And I just mentioned, since you mentioned robotics, that almost 70% of people in one survey recently said they would trust a robot more than their manager. Oh my dear God. Okay, so thank you so much, Mahni. Appreciate you. And now we have Nidhi Daga. Please welcome Nidhi. Woo!
Hi, thank you. Thanks for coordinating, facilitating, and thanks for having me. And so true, simplicity is underrated. I feel like we humans create some of the things make them more complex than they need to be or complicated. Well, I am Nidhi. I'm a mom of two highly curious boys, an entrepreneur, and a growth hacker. Very similar to Kimberly, I started kind of diverse and broad, and then I'm trying to find my niche now. And I don't think my journey has stopped. I don't think I've found the destination just yet. I am engineering by my education. I'm an engineer by my education. And then I fell in love with healthcare. So I ended up working in a clinic for a while, worked at Stanford Hospital, Abbott, for-profit, non-for-profit, then moved into tech and built out a software for medication management. And then from there, I transitioned into startups. Felt like, when you are in Bay Area, Silicon Valley, that's where I live currently. You have to try it. And I'm a risk taker. As we go through the day, as we go through the session, we'll talk more about that. So took a risk. My startup failed. Lots of good learning. Showed me it's okay to be vulnerable. And from there, I joined a fintech that was acquired by Chase. And then currently I am leading growth marketing for commercial real estate within JP Morgan. In terms of my most recent volunteer experience, I partnered with the local non-for-profit senior centers to advance technology literacy and promote aging in place. And that's something I'm passionate about, as I was really close to my grandparents and I kind of saw them age in place and how they really enjoyed that. Going back to sort of what I think my mantra or the leadership and what we need today, very similar to many, it's empathetic leadership, right? Like we are all human beings at the end of the day. And can we be kind, compassionate? There is so much going on around us. And if anything, COVID has taught us we should have clear priorities. So I do feel like be focused, kind, compassionate. Diversity is something that I really promote. I am mentoring a few women, rock stars, and they will become awesome leaders. I know that someday. And even the team I have at JP Morgan, we are quite different, diverse, I believe in social and ethnic background and different perspectives that team members need to be successful. And the last thing I would say is whatever you do, just have fun. And I think it's super important given life is so short. So that's a little bit about me and my leadership philosophy.
Oh, thank you, Nidhi. Thank you so much. Feel free to use reactions, type in the chat. And I want to just thank you for mentioning the importance of having fun. I actually got criticized last year when I facilitated a leadership workshop because the executives in that workshop complained to the organizer that I forced them to have fun. Now, let me tell you, as a scientist, I have studied the research on this. And when you are having fun, you are 3 to 4 times more creative. So let's bring on the fun. I personally don't like to have fun, but we have to do it because the research supports it. So with more fun coming, Mark Lowe, please welcome Mark Lowe, our fourth and final panelist. Woohoo!
Thank you. And I must say good morning to you because this is morning for me in Melbourne, Australia. I have lived in Melbourne for almost, I probably wouldn't want to tell you how many years, but it's most of my life. And right now we're in winter. I guess you guys are having a nice, good old summer season at the moment, but we're actually quite cold, although there's no snow in our part of the world. I'm very privileged today to be a part of a team of very distinguished leaders. And I'm humbled when I looked around the room, and particularly those speakers who have um, created businesses and opportunities for other people to work with them. And I read the brief bio from everybody, and I'm truly, truly excited to see where the mentoring club will go in the next few years, because I wish, and I kind of mentioned this to Liselle some years ago, I wish when I was younger, there was a mentoring club. I wish there was something like this that expounds the values of the individuals and their families and the integrity and so on, so that the younger ones, in those days I was one of the younger ones, I could learn from other people and become a better leader. But be as it may, we have a good platform, and this is why we're here today. I don't want to spend too much time on my past. I spent most of my years in the IT industry. You could say in the elephant IT industry era. This is when IT became popular, computers became popular, and I quickly moved from the technology side into management, albeit not so much out of my willingness. As you may know, in the days of old, when an organization loses its leader or loses its manager, they look at the next victim and make that victim the leader. And here you are, the next day you suddenly have the responsibility of looking after a whole bunch of people. So I found myself in management, not because of my desire, but because of the thrust that was pushed onto me. It's almost as if I didn't really have an alternative. That's another story that I'll share with you another day. Nevertheless, having gone into management, that started my interest in terms of leadership, because before then I had no idea how lonely a leader can be when you are running an organization. Now, today, people often link management with leadership, and we all know the difference, and I won't go there. However, to the average person, a leader is a manager. He's someone who has a title and has a position. And so we need to ask ourselves the question, are all the managers and the senior management team that you have been accustomed to, are they truly leaders? Have they really led in terms of your performance, your career, your interest, and the organizational performance? And I think today it is not difficult for us to look around and look at the CEOs and the MDs of the world. And in my part of the world, it's often an uproar when a senior executive exits an organization, either voluntarily or have been told to go, but they will go with a huge financial package, a huge bonus, a huge stock option. And so what do we see is senior managers who only look at short term. Every action they do is about bolstering that earning capacity when they leave. Now, if you have managers and leaders like that, and you work for someone like that, what do you think the follower is likely to learn and imitate from that leader? And at the end of the day, in organizations like that, you ended up cultivating and leading a lot of people to a direction of self-searching, self-achievement, and personal gains. Isn't that what we see most of these days? So I ask you this question. When you follow a leader, what do you look for? What is it that attracts you to listen to someone who says something to you and said, wow, that's really something that I haven't heard before. And I think this person has substance, and maybe I could look more into it. Now, it is not the position of the person, and often not necessarily only the achievement of the person, although that comes into play, but it is the quality of that individual that attracts your attention, is it not? The person that speaks with truth, the person who speaks with passion, the fact that he's speaking from his heart, not a prepared speech like most of our politicians do. And when someone speaks with their heart, you tend to think, this guy believes, or this lady believes in what is being written or being said. Therefore, we can trust that the message that comes out from this person's mouth is trustworthy. So I look at the leadership today, and I'm advocating that we return to the basics. Now, I'm gratified when I looked at the individual indications from the other panel members, they are always traits. One suggested servanthood. Nidhi talked about having compassion, and then Manny talked about different ways of dealing with complexity in life and also the job. What I'm saying is, if a leader doesn't have the basic core values of being a responsible citizen in the society, that person is unlikely to be able to lead the team that is entrusted to him or her, or later on, the organization they wanted to build. So today, where are the long-lasting, large organization that has a stated culture, a culture of treating everyone fairly, treating your competitor with respect, but by all means compete to the end, and at the same time spend all your positive energy doing good things rather than doing bad things? Where are those leaders? Where are those organizations today? So my personal view is, use our own time. If you are a manager, if you're a leader, build up the people around you by your own personal influence, by your own personal conviction, and slowly, one at a time, you will begin to build a core of great leaders for the future.
Thank you so much, Mark. You've touched on so many wonderful things there. It brings to mind some research that Dr. Robert Sutton did on power poisoning. Who's familiar with power poisoning? I'll just quickly share that with you. He found that people with power, like position and title, as you mentioned, they get more positive feedback, and they have lower impulse control. They think of their own needs more than others. These are people in positions of responsibility. They have lower empathy, and they think the rules don't apply to them. How does that sound for a so-called leader? Sounds like, Mark, you described them pretty well. Now, I want to ask the audience to answer this question in the chat before we jump into more discussions. What are the characteristics of leadership for leaders who we admire and willingly follow? And that's going to be my first question to the panel to summarize. What are the characteristics of leadership for leaders who are admired and willingly followed? So if you're in the audience, type in the chat any characteristics that for you is critical to willingly follow, not because they're your boss. You've all read the book Boss Hole, I take it. There is a book called Boss Hole. You don't need to read it. You just buy it and put it on your desk where your manager can see it. Good. All right. All right, here we go. Visionary, but pragmatic. Someone I can trust. Yes, trust. Someone who's authentic. What else have we got there? Thank you, Keith Blackie. Leadership, yes. Someone inspirational, ethical. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline and Deepak. Yes, keep on keeping those comments coming. And let me tell you what the research out of Santa Clara University came up with from Dr. Barry Posner and Jim Kouz's 30 years of research, found that the top 4 characteristics of people globally, not in the US just, but 70 different countries at least, the top 4 characteristics to be an admired leader who's willingly followed. You must, number 1, be honest. Over 70% of people said, if you're not honest, forget it. Forward-looking, inspiring. And 4th was competent. And we don't even care if you're competent if you're not honest, forward-looking, and inspiring. So love to, thank you, John. Appears to want what's best for the organization. He texted it directly to me, but John Van Hedderen, thank you so much. All right, so now I'm going to open this up. Let me go with Mark first, and then we'll go backwards through the order. What about this power poisoning and leaders willingly followed? Can you speak to that?
In my days, I was not fortunate enough to have people point at me and say, "I'll mentor you," right? And that doesn't often happen. I personally quietly adopted mentors in my own organization. Every single organization, I find someone that I admire. And what I look for is integrity, honesty, and trustworthiness. Now, the competence comes without saying, because if you're not competent, you basically can't even have a job, right? So I would argue that as a professional, you need to be competent in the field that you've chosen. But on top of that, to be a good leader, you need to be someone who is trustworthy. If your employee doesn't trust you, if your team members don't trust you, you don't have a team. I think same as the robots. When Mahni is training the leader of a robot to lead the rest of the team. I don't know how we instill the sense of trustworthiness in robots, but in humans, we often would think, if I trust this person, I don't have to worry about the other things that comes with it because he will look after me. Have you
Yep.
ever had a manager like that? I think that's my question for everyone.
Have you had a manager like that? Yes or no? You can use the reactions, yes or no, if you want to give instant feedback. And I also want to just thank you for bringing up that, there's a book called The Speed of Trust. When you trust people, trust each other, you can get a lot of stuff done a lot faster. Okay, let's go up the ladder there to Nidhi. Nidhi, please talk about this, the power poisoning or the leaders willingly followed. What would you like to share with us about that?
Yeah, no, I love that poison pill. I had never heard that, but I can totally relate. I've had managers, and I always believe people don't leave jobs, people leave managers. And there is a term manager, not leader, right? Because there are leaders who inspire and you would want to follow them. But if it's a manager and it's poisonous environment, no one wants to be there, especially in this day and age where you have so many options. For me, I always believe in being loyal to the leaders I admire. And for me, what is important in a leader is a few qualities. One, something I can learn from them. And it could be like my 8-year-old son who inspires me to be creative and adventurous, right? So it doesn't have to be someone who is very experienced. It's someone who inspires me to do something. Second, for me, it's really important for someone who is authentic and compassionate. We are all human beings at the end of the day. We all have multiple priorities. We have life outside work. So it's super important for me, for someone who is self-aware. They know their strengths, they know their weakness, they know how to surround themselves with the people who can complement their weaknesses and blind spots. Trust is another big one. And I know Mark touched on that a little bit. And last but not the least, someone who can motivate me and get me excited about doing something and kind of following them. So those are kind of the 2 or 3 things that are important for me as I think of leaders.
Beautiful. And I hope as you're listening to this, you're starting to think about, well, what is the difference between a manager and a leader? Because if you don't know the difference, you're going to fall into some very predictable traps. Okay, off we go to Mahni. Love to hear your thoughts about power poisoning and or leaders willingly follow, the characteristics of such people.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to shed light on this from my own perspective. As you see in the comments and the way Mark talked about it, or Nidhi even mentioned it, and I'm sure almost everybody agrees that trust is an important concept within leadership. I don't want to deny that. I just want to clarify that I 100% agree, but I want to look at it from a different point of view. There are some concepts. Let me hold back and say something first. I reached to a point in life that there is no positive trait, I would say, that I do believe a good leader shouldn't have. So when you reach to that point, you need to boil it down to some atomic components. The way you look at it, you say, okay, for example, trust is important. Nobody can deny it. But when I looked into it, you can easily figure out that there are these concepts, although important and true, but they are dependent to other components. Like, for example, culture. Here in Silicon Valley, for example, I have been working in Silicon Valley for past several years, and there are, as you guys know, like there are so many different cultures working together as a team. So if you talk with these individuals and ask them who do you trust, what is trust, there is almost no consensus between people when you ask them who is the person that they can trust. in every aspect of life, not only within their team or their work environment, even the type of person they can trust to get married with. So trust is a type of concept, in my opinion, that they are very under the influence of culture. And there are so many other concepts like trust that they are although positive, but they are under influence of more atomic concepts. This is one point of view. The other point of view I want to share is that the context is important when we talk about leadership. We should be, I believe, we should be aware of the context that we are interpreting a concept. All of these thoughts putting together through the years led me to a point that I reached to this framework that I mentioned. For example, if you come to me and if somebody asks me, have you ever had a good leader? I would answer from 3 different perspectives. When I began my career, I have been working for the past 20 years. When I began my career, midway, and now, if I answer as a person who started the career, I would say everybody who I worked for was a good leader. Mid-career, like if we divided somewhere between these 20 years, if you ask me, I would say my answer could be completely and drastically changed as a dichotomy. At the other side of the dichotomy, I would say nobody was a good leader. And right now, if you ask me, I would say that leaders they have different types of traits, that some of them there are weaknesses in those traits, and also they have some strengths. This is why I emphasize on this concept of having a framework, a very clear defined framework to enable the leaders to self-reflect and improve themselves through these 4 skills, which I repeat myself: the innovation, intellectualism, humility, and communication. And I have my own reasons why each of these skills are very atomic and how do they help each individual as a leader.
Right on. It sounds like a person who has a very clear framework could probably program robots to be great leaders. Great. Thank you, Mahni. And I want to just thank you for bringing up the issue of that trust is in the eye of the beholder. And we need to be very sensitive to that it's an interpretation. And also we need to adjust our leadership to match the needs of our followers, something called situational leadership long ago, to impedance match the people we are leading. We can't just lead everybody the same. Let's go on to Evelyne. Please share your thoughts about this dynamic and interesting topic, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to kick us off here by sharing this African proverb with you all. And it says, if you think that you don't have impact, you have yet to spend a night with a mosquito. What this stands for, I see that Mark likes it because he was trusted into leadership, as he shared with us earlier. And many of us here at some point or another, right? You guys we've been talking a lot about not having good leaderships or having managers. Like we have had to find ourselves in places where we were the one that needed to step up the game. And so this is a long way to say there is a leader in all of us. When I see every human being, when I see every woman, when I see every person, there's a leader in all of us. We can impact, and that's what's beautiful about it. And I was the person that referred to servanthood leadership. And I think the way we will understand it in this culture that we're in, where I live now, as Manny was referring to, a lot of things we have to take into account the context of culture. And I think the way people will understand it here is a transformative leader. And that is the leader, to go back to our subject, he leads or she leads from an elephant perspective with a lion roar and a lion attitude. What that means is you are there with the people, right? And I love that we've all have had not so great managers, and we can all point to these leaders that we know that we don't want to be. And that's half the battle. If I can point to the leader I don't want to be, then I can look towards the leader I can become. And I think what needs to happen for us as a culture today, I think it was either Nidhi or Mark that says that we are at an era where we get to impact what leadership looks like. And as we're thinking about doing that, I think what's important for us to do is to bring a shift of perspective into what leadership even looks like. Because a lot of us are expecting leadership to look a certain way. We're expecting leaders to be a certain way. And when we have leaders that are not looking that way, we ourselves can judge them. I have walked into rooms where they were expecting the executive director to walk in. And when I served them tea before I sat down, the look was different, right? And then I started, they're like, oh, you're the speaker. Yeah, well, now I know that you need more images in what I'm about to teach you, right? But our own perspective of it, though, we need to make sure that we are checking ourselves when we're talking or looking for leaders. And I think when we do that, that's going to be point number one. And the next thing is authenticity. It has come up a lot in the chat, and a lot of my co-moderators have like brushed up on it. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit, because here's another thing, like Mahni just said, that we have a very sustained image of what it should look like. And for some people, even authenticity is an outfit. I'm wearing earrings that are from someplace, which means I'm from there, and therefore I'm authentic. It's not that. If you are with the people that you're leading, if you are listening, being a good communicator, if you are opening up to hear what they have to say, having empathy, then you are going to, I want to say literally by default, become authentic. You cannot spend an entire day. I mean, we've been on here for what, 20 minutes with Kimberly, and we're all having fun, right? That's an example of authenticity. You cannot be amongst the people and be with them and listen to them and lead from within and not have this brush on you. And so I think when we're talking about these things, these are some of the points that we need to check ourselves as a culture. How do we think about leadership? Who do we think it's a leader? Right? Because we're very willing to say, we want leaders that are very empathetical. We want leaders that are authentic. But when we meet them, do we recognize their leadership? Do we lean into their leadership? Do we listen to their leadership?
Oh, Evelyne, you know, I was growing up at a time when I walked into a room as the program leader, they assumed I must be bringing coffee for somebody, and whose admin are you? So yes, we need to change our perception of what does a leader look like and sound like. And I love that you brought up the listening as the most important leadership skill. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Let's listen twice as much as we talk. If you're the leader, well, let's just put it in the chat. What % of everything in the entire universe do you personally know? I like to just don't be humble. What % of everything in the entire universe do you personally know? Out of 100% of everything in the entire universe. Yeah, tiny %. Thank you, Carolyn. 0.00001%. Thank you. Oh, yeah, less than 1%. Right. Okay. So if you don't listen, you're screwed, because 99% or more of what you need to know to be effective as a leader, you got to get from other people by listening to them. And there was a comment in the chat while you were speaking from John Van Hetteren about, well, don't people lead like this because they get better financial returns? Oh, no, I have the data. I'm happy to send you the data. Leaders who are terrible leaders, they make less money. So organizations where you have the best leadership make 20% more profit and have better customer satisfaction, higher stock price. Every metric of success is better when you have great leadership. So shareholders and investors are starting to learn this, and they're becoming more activist and saying, hey, you're going to have to fix your leadership problems because you're costing us money by being a boss hole. So let's keep going. Oh, by the way, one more thing. A couple of years ago, leadership people were asked in the United States of America, who is your most admired leader? This was about 10 years ago. The number 1 answer, nobody. All right, so let's go back around with another. Let's get into these elephants and lions, or whatever else you'd like to share about, the kind of leadership that's needed today. Who would like to go first? Mahni, Nidhi, Mark, Evelyne, please wave your hands frantically if you have a burning desire to go next.
I
Thank
can
you, Nidhi.
start,
Thank you.
because I love what you said about kind of the combination of the lion and elephant. And I totally believe that. I was trying to figure out, like, there has to be a version of unicorn out there or a hybrid animal. But it's so true, right? Like, I do agree that you need fearless and fierceness as a leader. You need to be bold in your vision, but you also need to have the ability to flex as needed and bring that wisdom, patience, problem solving, compassion, and high EQ. So do love the theme and kind of the combination. I think another thing that was mentioned, and I find myself doing this, like early in my career, I actually felt like I was very direct in my leadership style. And over time, it has evolved to be more of a coaching style where I create a safe environment, and and it's okay to fail. That's the big thing in my mind. And I think that was one of the big lessons when my startup failed. Failure feels very digital in the moment, but over time you realize you actually learn a lot from your failure, more than actually you would learn from your success. So I do feel like fail fast is my mantra. Take risk, fail fast, and be flexible and pivot. The last thing I do feel like, we've talked a lot about trust and authenticity. For me, a lot of that authenticity comes from self-awareness. I know I'm not good at everything, and I love when my team is like, oh, we want this project charter, and let's put off all our project trackers in project tracker and put our projects in there. And I love it. And I'm like, this is great, because I know I'm not very organized. I'm the creative and the strategic one. So I appreciate kind of having the team that complements my skill set. And I have no issue in being self-aware and kind of being vulnerable where I know my blind spots. So I do feel like vulnerability is underrated and perfection is overrated a lot of times.
Yeah, I really want to appreciate this mention of vulnerability multiple times. One of the leaders, the best leaders I work with, she starts every meeting with a moment of vulnerability by saying, here's where I made a mistake, here's where I failed, here's where I need help, or appreciation for her team. Nidhi, I'm going to ask you to choose which of the other three panelists would you like to hear from next? Look at their faces, see who has a burning desire.
Oh my God, you're putting me on the spot now.
No, I'm sharing control. It's sharing control, Nidhi. That's part of leadership. Mark, come on, Mark.
Well, I was just thinking about the elephants and the lions. And, this is just my personal view. To me, the leadership style of what we see today is not a finite solution to the leadership challenge. In other words, what is an elephant which is good for one organization and one circumstance may not be the kind of leadership needed for another one, right? And we know the dynamics of organizations changes, therefore the style need to be adapted to it. So that's one point. And by the way, I also believe that gender has got nothing to do with it. You can have fantastic female leaders that can lead an organization as well as men. So having got that out of the way, one of the things that I want to emphasize on, and I've heard from the panel speakers about living their lifestyle and in a way demonstrating to your teams and to the organization what you are like. Now, we all know trust and respect and acceptance have to be earned. And I remember once I was headhunted to join a company, which is the same company that I worked with Lisel many years ago. I walked into that company, I knew no one in that organization. And I had a team of people below me that I've never met. And a fear came over me. The fear was, what if I'm not accepted? Because I was kind of hand dropped into this organization and I took charge of the whole branch in that particular region. Well, what if these people doesn't want me to be their leader? how could I assume to be a role that will be meaningful to them? And so my exercise was to go around interviewing all the next level managers one by one, spending an hour with each one of them to try and get to know them. Now, as you can tell, I was a rookie manager. I was learning to be a leader. So I struggle, I make mistakes, right? And what Nidhi said before was so true. When you are weak, when you make mistakes, there's no shame in admitting it. But if you try to cover it up, that's where your integrity becomes a challenge. And so I learned in my time as a junior leader or junior manager that I have to earn my trust with people by living and speaking the way that I should speak and live. And I learned that I don't make promises I cannot deliver, because leaders often think that they need to make some promises, right? Politicians are great at that, but how many of them have been delivered? So when you deal with your employees or when your team members are in your team, you need to think about, if you try to fix a problem, what promise can you make that you must fulfill? Because when you can't fulfill, and that's when trust will be missing. And so it takes time. It will take you a few years to earn the trust from a big organization, both from your peers, from your bosses, as well as from your subordinates. But it is a mandatory part, because without that trust, and we don't, and I think Manny made it very clear that there were different facets and there are different cultures that impacts it. But fundamentally, trust exists nowadays in many countries where they're multinationals, different people from different countries. Even when I was in Australia, we had a team of international proportions, people from all over the world. And because we demonstrate, I think the walk the talk is the key phrase that I'm using here. What you say, you do. What I can have, you can have. When you do that, people trust you.
Right on. That is so critical. Thank you, Mark. Yes, I ask people all the time, good, make the peace sign. Everybody do it with me right now. Make the peace sign right now. Go ahead, do it with me. Watch me carefully. Place this peace sign on your chin. Yeah, your chin is right here, people. Your chin. I know you all speak good English, so was it an English problem? No. I'm being the worst kind of leader, not modeling the way. So let's say and do the same thing. We have a couple more minutes now. We're going to get something from Mahni and Evelyne. Mark, I want you to choose which one, Evelyne or Mahni, goes next. This is called sharing power, sharing control, not because I can't make a decision.
I would invite Mahni, not because I prefer him in any way, but Evelyne had a fair bit of opportunities to share with us. So I thought Mahni has spoken very little, so maybe he could share with us. Is that okay?
Evelyne, if you want to go first, you can.
Oh, you are so kind. Well, here Mahni has the power and he offers it to Evelyne. I will let you two sort it out. This is demonstrating what I mean. Shared power, shared control.
Sure.
Exactly. And as two people who've been talking about culture and servanthood leadership, I really appreciate that. I will love to hear from you, my dear.
Sure. Thank you.
Mahni, thank you.
And then I can close it off.
Look at that. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Evelyne. The original question that was asked about whether should be the leadership style should be more to the side of the elephant or lion. The way I look at it, I would answer that question because Kimberly, you said you are a physicist. So I was thinking from that point of view. I am not in favor of dichotomies, like saying you should stay in one side. And I do believe that leaders cannot, a good, effective leader cannot do that. It depends on the situation. It's more of like how this is related to physics. I would say it's not Newtonian physics. It's basically you cannot solve it from that approach. So I would say it's not a dichotomy. It's a spectrum. And a leader should have this ability to find the right situation and apply the right tool to solve the problem. That's my take on that question. And another concept I wanted to just mention is this concept of collaboration. A good leader needs to understand and reinforce collaborative environment at work. Why it's important? Because collaboration has a very specific definition, and the most important concept as a pillar for collaboration is understanding the concept of shared goal. If a team or a leader fails to understand the concept of the shared goal, there will be no collaboration. There will be just a bunch of groups as silos working together and not being able to push the projects forward and not being able to be led. So it is very important for the leaders to understand what is the shared goal and reinforce it as much as they can from different points of view, using different tools, considering the team's abilities. And as my last point, I'm looking forward to work with some younger individuals and to be able to show them their abilities and basically shape or form new principles based on who they are to become a better leader. Thank you.
Right on, helping them to become the highest and best version of themselves, not what someone else could be, but the highest best version of themselves. So we'll wrap up with Evelyne, your comments, and then back to Liesl to bring us to a close today. Evelyne, thank you so much for kindly allowing Mahni to go.
Definitely. It's beautiful because everything I have to say actually builds up on what he just mentioned, which is that a leader, and this is going to be most for my fellow leaders, and I love that we're all leaders here, we have got to be moldable. If you are working with a team in the Ivory Coast, in Barcelona, in United States, like, people are different. They react differently. They are looking for a different style of leadership. So you have got to make it in a way that you as a leader can be moldable wherever you are. Not to change yourself, but become moldable, right? And the next thing I would say is that Nidhi mentioned it earlier, self-awareness. What we're trying to say here is something simple. Don't go looking for what you don't have in you in the people that you're leading. It's as simple as that. If you need affirmation, if you need word of acknowledgement, if you need people to praise you, go look for it somewhere else. Your position as a leader is not a place to look for that, because we all heard from Mark earlier, it could sometimes be a lonely place. And these are some of the things that make it a lonely place. You are looking for people to praise you every Monday at the meeting. This is not why we're here. We're here to get the work done, and we're here to show us how and lead us through it. And the next thing I will say is, as a leader, I love how Mahni said, collaboration. Please feel free to ask people when you don't know. It's okay to not know. And it's funny because when I was a teacher, right, the first thing, all the teachers, I was so scared, guys. I was in a preschool classroom. I was like, I cannot do this. All these 2-year-olds are going to figure out, I don't know what I'm doing. And all the other teachers look at me and they say, welcome to the club. That's what leadership is about. Feel free to ask questions. That's when your vulnerability will come in. And Liesl, I give the mic back to you.
There's going to be another event, I'm sure, at Liesl. Please wrap us up. We're a minute over. I understand.
For next month, I was able to connect with an executive communication coach, Brian Sparks. So our topic is about 5 effective ways to communicate as a leader, and that's going to be on July 28th. Other activities, if you are in the Bay Area, second Saturday of the month, we are meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning to do the 3.5-mile hike at the Dish at Stanford. And then for fundraising, as a nonprofit, we have organized a virtual run, walk, bike. We'd like really for everybody or for people anywhere in the world to actually send in their photos on their run, walk, bike. So this is virtual. You can do it any day between July 7 and August 8. And so to encourage people to send in their photos, we are giving away prizes of $100 and $300 for the most creative photos. And these are some of our winners from the last 2 years. And definitely, we would like to encourage people, if any of the messages that you received in this session today resonates with you, we're encouraging you to become a mentee or spread the word and tell people to become a mentee, likewise as a mentor. And if you are so inclined to contribute to our efforts, we are still mostly a volunteer-based run organization. We're still raising funds to employ our first employee. And so these are some of the roles that we are needing help on. And then, of course, as a nonprofit, you can donate to us anytime on our website. And the last slide is really just asking for feedback. I believe John Benedict has given also the link in the chat, but you will have a copy of this slide and you will receive it we probably have received already a notification on Eventbrite. So you can have access to this slide as well. So you can explore some of the links that are there. So I'll stop sharing. And again, I would like to thank everybody who stayed on, all the speakers, Manny, Mark, Evelyn, Nidhi, and of course, Kimberly. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.